Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the latest edition of the EFL Betting Show. We're filming slightly earlier than our usual Friday slot this week due to some annual leave. So we've been on the early prices and I will just warn you, the prices do move between a Thursday and a Saturday. So if you're watching this and got to follow a bet and notice that the odds have changed a little bit, well, you'll just have to forgive us on this particular occasion. But it's myself, Matt Hill, joined by my regular co-host, EFL expert Gab Sutton, and we're here to run you through what is a reduced slate this weekend due to the international break. And Gab, you weren't quite on the ball when I caught you early this morning, where you were picking fixtures from the Championship, which is still a week away.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny that, isn't it? Because instinctively I like to go Championship, League One, League Two, have a taste of all three leagues. So I was in the habit of doing that, and then so I looked at the Championship and completely forgot to me that's actually next week. So
I only noticed it because I'd done the same thing yesterday. So thankfully, bailed each other out, yeah, and the Championship. Well, what I'm interested, I'm not going to reveal it, but I'm interested to see if Gab sticks with his same prediction for a Championship match in a week's time, and I'll let you know if he did or not on next week's show. But if you're watching the EFL Betting Show for the first time, welcome along. It's a whistle-stop tour through some of the EFL slate. We'll pick out 3 games each where we have a strong fancy heading into this weekend and discuss and debate them and hopefully leave you with a few winners to enjoy. Obviously, no Championship, as I say, so we dive straight in with League One. Gab, I'm going to put you in first this week, mate. Your alternative suggestion when I told you there was no Championship was to offer up this, which was Northampton, a team that we've discussed a lot in recent weeks, and I know that you're a big fans of. We discussed their game with Birmingham at length last week, and sure enough, they put in a stellar performance and ended up getting a point there. So can they do you another favour this week? You're going to back them draw no bet at home to Blackpool, and you're getting an odds against quote of 5-4 there. Talk us through this one.
Yeah, I think Northampton are a bit like the new Notts County for me, where I have a team that I seem to fancy. I feel like I've gone with Northampton for 2 or 3 weeks now. And I think it's I've sort of outlined the reasons why I like them and their out of possession work and their organisation under Kevin Nolan before. I don't particularly need to go over old ground there, but essentially I like them defensively. And I don't think they're going to lose many games relative to their sort of position in the table. And I'm not sure the traders have necessarily caught on to that. I think the traders probably still see Northampton Town as a bottom 6 side, if you like, whereas I would see them more as a lower mid-table side, the way that they're playing. So there's a slight difference between how the traders see them and how I would see them, added to the fact that they still have something to play for in terms of just completely wrapping up safety. So yeah, I think there's value with Northampton. I've gone with the draw no bet just because I don't think Blackpool lose many games either, certainly since the turn of the year, and they're a very well organised side themselves. So it might be a draw, but I think there's probably value with Northampton just because they're a little bit underrated with the bookies for my money.
Yeah, and normally I wouldn't go as strong as lambast you, but I do make a joke about the draw no bet, but I think it's valid here. Blackpool, I was having a little look earlier, drawn 10 of their last 18 in League One. So like you say, a resilient side and hard to actually get the better of. But Northampton, I think everything you said about them in recent weeks, Gab, has been vindicated in the performances. And I just wonder about them next season, looking fairly certain that they're going to be just going again next season. Kevin Nolan's had time to get his feet under the table and bring his ideas across. What are realistic targets for Northampton in 25-26, do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, well, obviously, so they came up in 2023, so this would be their 3rd season in League One. So I think this was always going to be a really tough season, I felt, because unlike normally, Matt, what you find is when you come up, you can normally rely on the synergy and the key players that got you up there. And the second season, normally either the key players are, they'll either have left or they might not be as good as they were. And it's a slightly different situation and you kind of live or die on your recruitment. And in Northampton's case, it's been the strength of their organisation, and Kevin Nolan's very much picked up that sort of template. Very interesting to see what the what the recruitment looks like at Northampton Town. They've had people like Martin Foyle at the club who's done a good job there previously. They don't have him there anymore. So that's going to be really interesting for me to see whether Kevin Nolan has a lot of the recruitment autonomy or whether that's somebody else. So there's a lot of factors that play there. I think for Northampton Town, it's a level historically that they've struggled at and been sort of around the bottom 8 of. So I think if they can finish mid-table and stabilise and develop a few players, I think that would be a good season. But one thing I would say about the Cobblers, watch out for Max Dyche, son of Sean Dyche, obviously, a bit of a chip off the old block, no-nonsense centre half, puts his head, where it hurts. He's going to be one to watch out for. So hopefully he can continue to develop, maybe at Sixfields.
Yeah, like father, like son there, one to keep an eye on for sure. Well, on to my pick in League One, and I'm going to take on the team that's top of the form table, which is probably an unwise start to most betting shows, but there we are. This is a little bit of a price play for me here. I want to be with Peterborough to beat Charlton, just shy of 2-1. They are drifting. I do think if you hold fire, I'm talking on Thursday morning. I think if you hang on till Thursday evening, you will get some 2-1 about Posh. And for me, that's a good entry point for this game because although I referenced Charlton as having a fantastic time of things recently, they are top of the form table. But Peterborough are sat in 4th on that very same form table over the last 10 games. And I think you could easily be forgiven for overlooking some of the work that they've been doing in recent times. It wasn't so long ago that we were talking about Peterborough getting sucked into very much a relegation battle. But they've now gone on a 6-game unbeaten streak in League One, which has really helped drag them away from trouble. They're 6 points clear of Burton in the final relegation spot and 12 clear of the rest. And given their form and the quality in the ranks and the way they've turned it around, I am quite confident in saying that they're going to be okay in that League One relegation battle now. Got a really good win away at Cambridge last time out as well, which Posh fans will always enjoy. And I think that there's a little bit of a mentality shift in this group here, and it's a very, very young group, isn't it, with Peterborough, as we've come to expect with Posh over the years, I think. But when you drill down on it, just how young this team is, taking out Jed Steer in goal, I think last week's team, they only had one player 27, and then the rest of them were 25 or younger, and the forward line are all either teenagers or very early 20s. So it's a very, very young group, and I think Darren Ferguson has worked with enough young teams to probably know how to handle it there. And there was some very questionable comments, which I think you actually wrote about a few weeks ago, where he questioned his team's character. For me, that could go one way or the other. It's either going to lose you the dressing room or you're going to get that reaction. What I also think has helped turn Posh's season around is an EFL trophy campaign, which has seen them get all the way to the final with Birmingham, which takes place in about a month's time, I believe. But sometimes these competitions, cup competitions, it can be a distraction, but equally, if you go on a little run, it can be a great confidence builder. And I think the young players have really enjoyed the platform. Obviously, knocking out Wrexham in good fashion last time out in the semis as well. I think that's helped build the confidence in the ranks. And I really do feel with young sides, confidence is such a huge factor. And now they're playing with a freedom and a belief that simply wasn't there a month ago. And they also have an excellent home record against Charlton in particular. Charlton won last time out earlier this season, 2-1 with a late Macaulay Gillespie header. But prior to that, Peterborough were actually unbeaten in 12 against Charlton. So they were a real bogey team for them. And I think they're quite fancy it here back at London Road. Charlton have been excellent. As I say, I love the work Nathan Jones is doing. I think they've got a really, really strong chance of going up automatically now just because of those above them in Wickham, although they got a good win, maybe catchable for my money. So I think they've got a great chance here. But the one thing I would say, not sure Charlton's away form is quite as strong as the home form, where they're on a fantastic winning streak. I think they've won 6 in a row at the Valley now. If you look at their last 5, although they've won 2, drawn 2 and lost 1, the 2 wins against Crawley and Leyton Orient, who, let's be honest, prior to last week were in real free fall, lost 5 on the bounce, I think. I just question whether their away form is quite as strong as the home form. And I think
they've had a trough away from the Valley.
There you go. You always find one, Gav. Goodness me, even at this time in the morning. But yeah, it's for me, I think there's enough there in that away form versus the perfect exemplary home record to just make me want to chance Peterborough around 2-1. Like I say, looking like they're going to be safe, playing with a real confidence, some young, exciting attacking players. I think they can really serve it up to Charlton. I think it'll be an entertaining game, and I think Posh can maybe just edge it at just shy of 2-1.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what's really transformed things for Peterborough United after that 5-1 loss at Lincoln, where I was very worried about Peterborough and the
Me
sort of
too.
the atmosphere there and how they've sort of really impressed with how they've responded to that. They brought in the likes of Taya Whiddon at left back and Sam Hughes at centre back. They were actually signed before the Lincoln game, but they've since made a really big impact on the defence. And so there's a bit more rigidity and solidity about Peterborough now, which is great. And then at the other hand, they've got players going forward who can make a difference. Kwame Poku coming back. They've got Malik Mothersill. They've got Ricky J. Jones. Cian Hayes even is a very good ball carrier. And so they've got players who, yes, they've still got some developing to do, but have also got a very high ceiling. And so, yeah, it does start to feel a little bit more optimistic about Peterborough. And while it's still been a disappointing season, no question about that, if they can finish the season in good form, along with an EFL Trophy final and maybe victory, although that's going to be tough, it puts a slightly more optimistic slant on what's been overall a challenging campaign.
It certainly does, and yeah, it's an interesting game. Probably the game of the weekend for me in terms of I'm most excited to see how it pans out, because I do think that Charlton are a fantastic side, but I think Posh, with nothing to lose and a confident set of young forwards, could serve it up to them. So we'll see how that goes there. Now, in recent weeks, we've seen a little bit of synergy between myself and Gab. We've had a few picks that have started to be along the same lines, and we've got the same again this week. So this has generally gone pretty well for us when we've been on the same lines. Let's see if that trend continues here. We've both gone for Bristol Rovers to beat Crawley at 5-2. Gab, I think last week I led on our joint pick with my thoughts, so I'll let you kick off here. But I imagine we're going to be saying similar things here. Obviously, it's been a very disrupted time at Crawley. Rob Elliott's departure announced yesterday, I think it was, and it can't come as a surprise in terms of results, but you do wonder a little bit about the timing, because they do kind of look dead and buried to me at this stage already, and now who they're going to bring in next is a big question for me. Where the club is generally heading is a big question for me. And I think 5-2 on this side to suffer defeat at the weekend for me feels big.
Yeah, definitely. I think structurally, I think they're quite similar in that I both think that they're capable of playing some good football and creating chances. And I both think that they can be vulnerable at possession. However, the big difference between Bristol Rovers and Crawley is that while Bristol Rovers have proven Football League players like, say, an Isaac Hutchinson or a Shaq Ford or Chris Martin, players that have sort of done it in these levels, Crawley have a squad of players that have kind of worked their way up from non-league and probably aren't quite up to League One standards, certainly playing the kind of football that they've wanted to at this level. So whereas Bristol Rovers have a really good coach, I think, in Inigo Calderon, certainly in terms of in-possession work, their out-of-possession stuff's been a bit hit and miss. But I think I've got a feeling that both teams might score. So if you wanted to go down that route, there's an option there. But I think Bristol Rovers, they've got a bit more Football League quality, and that's where I would side with them. And also, it is a price play at 5-2, given that I think Bristol Rovers are fairly comfortably actually a better side than Crawley. I think 5-2 is a huge value. So I expect that might be my knack for the weekend.
Yeah, that's the same for me. It is a price play. I just can't, I can't have a team of Bristol Rovers' stature 5-2 to beat this Crawley side at the moment. And I think that Rob Elliott's departure will have unsettled things a little bit, because I've seen it firsthand with my own team this season. When you're wedded to a style of play, and it's a very possession-heavy front foot style of play and stuff, and then you remove the manager, to get that immediate upturn in results, unless you're going to kind of throw the book out the window and just say, look, just enjoy your football, it's not quite as easy as that, to be honest. And I'm a bit worried about the timing of this appointment. And I was looking at some of the names that the bookies are kind of getting at this stage for the role. There's no obvious contender. I see Scott Lindsay up there. I can't really see him going back to Crawley at the moment. John Brady, I think he would have his set sight a little bit higher potentially than Crawley in League Two, as it looks like as well. So Ian Ever, I definitely can't see that one happening. So I just wonder who the next manager is going to be, whether we're going to see a quick appointment or whether it's going to be left in interim charge for till the end of the season, as we've seen with a couple of sides doing recently. But yeah, I'm just worried about Crawley generally, and I think any side 5-2 to beat them in League One would have possibly taken my fancy. But Bristol Rovers, like you say, Gab, I have them down as a solid mid-table side here in League One. I know they're dealing with a couple of injuries at the moment as well, and the fans are maybe feeling a little bit pessimistic about how the season's going to conclude. But I think this is a very winnable opportunity for them, and yeah, I'm happy to play them at the price. So just echoing what you say there, really.
Yeah, I think if what's always a really helpful guide, Matt, is what would we have thought the odds would have been if we'd come to it fresh? I think I would have probably said Bristol Rovers might have been about 13-10 for the victory. I don't know about you. And
yeah, maybe not that short, but not far closer to your price than the current price, to be honest. I was expecting to see south of 2-1, so to see 5-2, it did surprise me, really. Like I say, sometimes you just have to trust your gut with these things, don't you? And I think 5-2, it's worth the chance, isn't it? So that's very much where I'm at with that pick. And good to see that we agree. Let's see if we can keep our strong record going when it comes to joint picks there. Well, we both dive into League Two for our final pick on this week's show. Gab, you to go first here, and you've got Wimbledon, who got the better of Carlisle last weekend, unfortunately, and they play another Cumbrian side here in Barrow. You're going to back them to do a job again and win to 0 at a juicy 21-10. Tell us why.
Yeah, I think just with Wimbledon, they've just got a really solid defensive resilience. It's been really interesting, actually, to compare their record to Notts County, which is very similar on paper if you look at the wins, draws, losses columns. But I think the difference is really Notts County have kind of got their points in, big blocks, if you like, whereas Wimbledon, I think they've not won more than 3 in a row, but they've not lost more than 2 in a row. So it's they've kind of spread their points across the season very evenly. And I think there's probably there's a consistency to that, in that they've always been in and around the top 7. They've got a centre half I really like in Joe Lewis. They've got a midfielder in Jake Reeves, who I think dictates play really well. And they've got legs in that midfield with Callum Maycock and Ali Smith, who's been outstanding this season. They've got an attacking wing back in Josh Knifeville, who's been outstanding. I think possibly a bit of a concern would be that if I wanted to put you off this one, or a bit of caution, I suppose, would be that Matty Stevens is without a goal in 7, and previously he's been the main one that they've relied on for goals, and they are kind of looking for, how do we find other alternatives at the moment? However, I think that there's enough in there to think that they're going to get a goal from somewhere against the Barrack side that are looking ahead to the summer, where they'll probably have a big rebuild of players. They've probably got enough points to beat the drop now. So yeah, I would fancy Wimbledon to keep a clean sheet and pick up the 3 points.
Yeah, Wimbledon, I think, like you say, you made some good points there about the consistent element to them, and I don't think they're we've spoke about the League Two promotion battle several times this season, and other than Walsall, who streaked away and then have come back to the field a little bit, there's not been many sort of outstanding candidates. They've all kind of got their flaws, I think, this season, and we have seen previous iterations of League Two where there's been 3 superb sides that have kind of torn away with it. I think back a couple of seasons to Wrexham's and Stockport's promotion season, for example. But it's very much an open playing field there, and I think in that kind of season, consistency can often be the difference. Kind of just your ability to grind out the results at the right time, rather than be relying on a kind of confidence or a streaky side. So we'll see. I quite like the selection. I mean, Barrow, they're quite an unpredictable team, I suppose, at the moment. But yeah, they've definitely got one eye on next season. I agree. I think that as the season ticks on as well, I would expect a little bit of regression from them further, as they you've probably got a lot of players there. When you have these big rebuilds on the cards, you quite often see it where the desire to win for a mid-table side, when 8 of the 11 aren't going to be there next season, it is far lower than your average team. And that sometimes does lead to a bit of a limp end to the campaign. But like you say, I think they've done enough to be safe. And yeah, I can very much see your angle here, Gab. So wishing you well with that one. My final pick, and rounding off this week's show, is also in League Two. I'm going to go for Cheltenham to beat MK Dons at 6-4. And regular listeners will know that I'm bitterly disappointed with MK Dons this season, who've fudged all of my anti-post multiples this year. I really did have high hopes for them when I saw the squad that they were assembling at the start of the season. But to say it hasn't gone well would be an understatement. Recently getting rid of Scott Lindsay, of course, who took 9 points from his final, possible 48 from his final 16 games. So I don't think there could be too many complaints in terms of results, but certainly questions to be asked in terms of process and planning, I guess. We've now got an interim in charge to the end of the season in Ben Gladwin there. So it does make me question just how much the club had thought through Lindsay's departure and what the next steps were. But ultimately, I have to judge them on their merits of right now. And although I really rate some of the players in this squad, I've just not seen anything in MK Dons' results to make me want to get with them recently. I've given them a few chances this season, but in recent weeks, I just can't get there. I know they got a good win over Morecambe, but it was quite a scrappy affair, to be honest. They won it 2-1. And the other two games that Gladwin's been in charge of, either side of that, have been disappointing away defeats. 2-0 at Accrington, 3-0 at Port Vale. They're showing next to nothing on the road, and they're away again here against a Cheltenham side who I think have outperformed expectations. Quite on the contrary to MK Dons, actually. I was worried about them at the start of the season, had them down as real relegation candidates. Got to give huge credit to Michael Flynn, the way he's gone in there and galvanised things and applied his methods really effectively. Reminiscent to me a little bit of his Newport spell, where he's getting the team playing better than the sum of their parts potentially, and just implementing a really effective way of playing. So I looked into Cheltenham's home record, and particularly in recent times, in their last 13 home games in League Two, they've only been beaten twice, winning 6 and drawing 5. So that's kind of something I associate with a Flynn team as well, being good on their own patch and stuff. And I think this is quite simply a case of a team who's really good and quite effective at home against a team that have looked desperate away from home recently. And MK Dons' away record is absolutely abject in recent months. So I don't need much encouragement to get with Cheltenham. There is a little bit of 6-4 still available at William Hill. And I think, we touched on it there with Barrow about a team that just desperately probably wants the end of the season to come now. That's MK Dons for me. What have they got left to achieve this season? They've gone massively under expectations. They've sacked the manager. They've got an interim in charge. They've probably got loads of disillusioned players. Yes, there's quality there, but you cannot be afraid to take a team like that on. They're in a real mess. And I think 6-4 about a home win here for Cheltenham, perfectly fair.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with MK Dons, I'm probably as confused by it as you are, Matt, really, because it felt for a long time with them that things add up on paper, that the squad looks good, and you go, yes, these are all good players. And yet when you see them on the pitch, it doesn't add up. So there's something amiss. I kind of wondered whether it was going to be culture, a cultural issue, but I mean, speaking to people inside and outside, I think it doesn't seem like this is a group where people have checked out, or they don't care, or they're just there for the paycheck. But it does seem like there's maybe a fitness thing, there's an intensity thing where they're just a little bit off. So when Scott Lindsay was at Crawley, he had an excellent strength and conditioning coach, which was why they got through a lot of running, and they have players that have sort of come a long way, and there's a real intensity to their game and a real sort of appetite for it. And then when Scott Lindsay went to MK Dons, he wasn't able to take his strength and conditioning coach with him, and therefore the intensity out of possession hasn't been as strong as it was at Crawley, and therefore even though MK Dons have got better technical players, they weren't able to implement what he wanted to do because they couldn't quite earn the right to play that way in terms of the aggression against the ball. So that's definitely a big thing that they've got to rethink in the summer. But you're right. I mean, you're trying to play these last 9 games or so to give fans something to grab onto for next season. But it's not a huge incentive, is it? And I think Cheltenham still on paper have a sniff of the playoffs. They could win and go 5 points off. You never know. So, I think I can see why you've gone for Cheltenham. I'm not sure I necessarily put my own money on it, but I can see the thinking for sure, because it's been a really disappointing season for MK Dons.
Yeah, I give credit to Cheltenham, but it would be a more anti-MK Dons stance, this, to be honest. 6-4 with them on the road. Like I said, it had a tough time of things on the travels recently, and I just wonder about player desire a little bit. And that's not criticising the players, but I think when you come in, when you buy into a project that you're going to be competing for promotion, and for whatever reason it's gone badly wrong, it is really, really tough at this stage of the season when, okay, you're probably almost certainly not going to go down, but you're nowhere near the playoffs. Where is the motivation as a player? I think it even if you are a personally motivated person, then it's still tough to really hit your top levels when there's nothing to play for, when things haven't gone well. And then you think of some of these players that came in January because Scott Lindsay was there, and Scott Lindsay's no longer there. They might be a bit disillusioned with things as well. So I think in the next few weeks, where there's a price opportunity, I probably am going to want to be against MK Dons. Whereas next season, if they were to bring the right manager in and make some backroom changes, I might really be keen on them again to go really well. But it's a timing thing. I want to take them on at the moment, and I've got faith in Michael Flynn to bring his team to deliver a certain level, and that's what I'm expecting from this game. So that rounds off our picks for the EFL reduced slate this weekend. We will just recap them, starting with you, Gab. And you've already kind of hinted this when you were saying earlier, but if I was to push you hard for your nap this week, would it be that Bristol Rovers 5-2 to beat Crawley?
Yeah, I think so. Just as a price play, I think there's a bit of value elsewhere with the Northampton and the Wimbledon one, but I think the 5-2 for just the standard win, when I'm pretty confident that one team's better than another, to get that at 5-2, I think that's great value.
Yeah, I very nearly joined you with that as my nap, but actually I've really talked myself into Cheltenham to be MK Dons at 6-4. I think for all the reasons given, I'm feeling quite bullish about that one. So I'll go for a little bit of variation, and I'll nap up the Robins to get the better of hapless MK Dons at 6-4. Yeah, so let us know what you fancy in this week's EFL slate if you are having a play in League 1 and 2. And we'd love to hear any insights about your teams as well between now and the end of the season. If you think you have a little nugget of gold that me and Gab maybe haven't factored into our thinking, have you got an injury crisis that people haven't picked up on, or are there a youngster waiting in the wings to get their chance in these final few games? I'd love to hear from you. If so, do give us a comment down below, thumb up on the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to hit subscribe. We'll be back next Thursday on Odds Now for more EFL chat, but until then, go well and we'll see you soon.